April 15, 1912, 2:20 in the morning. The North Atlantic is almost completely black. The water is freezing and more than 2,000 people are fighting for their lives. In the distance, the largest and most famous ship in the world is disappearing beneath the ocean. But here's the question that has haunted Titanic for more than a century. Did the disaster begin when Titanic struck the iceberg, or had the ship already been moving toward destruction for days? Because before Titanic ever saw the ice, she had been warned, again and again, and somehow those warnings didn't stop her. To understand why, we have to go back to the hours before the collision. On April 14th, ships crossing the North Atlantic were reporting unusually heavy concentrations of ice. Titanic received multiple wireless messages warning of ice fields and drifting bergs along her route. Some warnings reached the bridge. Others passed through the wireless room, where Jack Phillips and Harold Bride were overwhelmed by passenger telegrams. Wireless communication was still new, and wealthy passengers were using it to send messages home from the middle of the ocean. One warning from the Mesaba described a large area of heavy pack ice and icebergs ahead, but the message was never properly delivered to the bridge. It remained in the wireless room, and Titanic kept moving, at close to her maximum operational speed. Today, that sounds reckless, but in 1912, it was not unusual for ships to maintain speed in areas where ice had been reported. Captains relied on lookouts to spot danger and maneuver around it. Titanic was not simply being driven by one reckless man. She was operating inside a system that believed human beings could see danger in time, and that belief was about to be tested. There was no radar, no GPS, no satellites, no digital weather maps. At night, Titanic's most important early warning system was a pair of human eyes in the crow's nest. Lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee stared into the darkness. They didn't have binoculars available to them, and the night itself was almost perfect for hiding an iceberg. There was little wind. The sea was unusually calm. There was no moon. Normally, waves breaking against an iceberg could make it easier to spot. But that night, the ocean offered almost no visual warning. At approximately 11:40 p.m., Fleet suddenly saw a dark shape directly ahead. He rang the warning bell 3 times and called the bridge. Iceberg right ahead. First Officer William Murdoch reacted immediately. The helm was ordered hard over and Titanic began to turn. But Titanic was nearly 900 feet long and carried enormous momentum. She couldn't simply swerve like a car. The iceberg was already dangerously close. For a moment, it appeared that Titanic might pass safely. The bow began moving away from the iceberg, but the ship didn't clear it. Instead, the iceberg scraped along the starboard side beneath the waterline. There was no gigantic explosion, no dramatic impact that sent everyone running. Passengers felt a vibration. Some heard a strange grinding or tearing sound. On the upper decks, the ship still looked completely normal. Lights were shining. People were moving around. Some passengers even went outside to see the iceberg drifting away. Almost nobody understood what had happened, but below the waterline, Titanic was already doomed. The damage wasn't one enormous hole. The collision opened a series of breaches across the forward part of the hull, allowing water into multiple compartments. Titanic had been built with a sophisticated watertight compartment system. It was one of the reasons people believed she was exceptionally safe. But the system had a limit. Titanic could survive serious flooding, but not flooding across too many forward compartments. The iceberg had damaged more than the ship could tolerate. As the bow settled lower, water began reaching the tops of the bulkheads, separating the compartments. Then it spilled over into the next one, and the next. The system wasn't useless. It was simply being overwhelmed. Thomas Andrews, Titanic's designer, examined the damage. His conclusion was devastating. The ship would sink. The people aboard had only a few hours, and now they faced another problem. There weren't enough lifeboats. Titanic carried enough lifeboat capacity for roughly 1,178 people, while more than 2,200 people were aboard. The reason was partly an outdated safety system. Lifeboat regulations were based largely on the ship's size rather than the number of passengers. Titanic actually carried more lifeboats than the law required. But the law had failed to keep up with the size of modern ocean liners. Now the numbers were brutal. More than 2,000 people, roughly 1,100 lifeboat places, and even those places would not all be used. When the first lifeboats were prepared, many passengers simply couldn't believe Titanic was in serious danger. Think about what that meant. You are standing on a warm, brightly lit ship. The decks are still level. The engines have stopped, but the ship doesn't look like it's sinking. Then someone tells you to climb into a tiny open boat and be lowered into a freezing ocean. It doesn't feel logical. It doesn't feel necessary. So people hesitated. Some refused to leave. Families struggled with impossible choices. Husbands were separated from wives, and several lifeboats left with empty seats. Titanic had limited time, and that time was being lost. Then another problem emerged, one that involved a ship nearby. The SS Californian was in the region, surrounded by ice. Her wireless operator had warned Titanic about the ice earlier that evening, but Titanic's operator was exhausted and dealing with passenger traffic. The exchange ended badly, and the Californian's wireless operator eventually shut down his equipment and went asleep. Later, officers aboard Californian saw rockets rising in the distance. They could see lights from another vessel, but they did not immediately understand that the ship might be in distress. No wireless communication was available to clarify the situation. Whether Californian could have reached Titanic in time remains debated. The ice made any approach dangerous, and the exact distance and timing remain disputed. But the fact remains, another ship was nearby and communication had failed when it mattered most. Back on Titanic, the situation was becoming impossible to hide. The bow was sinking deeper. Water was spreading across the lower decks. The stern began rising. Thousands of people crowded onto the upper decks, and through much of the night, the ship's musicians continued playing, trying to keep passengers calm. Exactly what they played at the very end remains uncertain. Survivor accounts differ, but the music became one of the most haunting symbols of the disaster. Around 2:20 a.m., Titanic's stern rose high above the ocean. The ship broke apart and disappeared beneath the surface, and suddenly the enormous vessel was gone. What remained were lifeboats, wreckage, and hundreds of people in the freezing water. The cries carried across the darkness. Survivors in the lifeboats faced an impossible decision: row back toward people in the water or stay away because the crowd could overwhelm their small boats. Some turned back. Many didn't. Most people in the water died from the cold. Hours later, the RMS Carpathia arrived. She had received Titanic's distress signals and raced through the night, but she was too late to save the ship. She could only save the people who remained in the lifeboats. More than 700 survivors were rescued. More than 1,500 people died. And when the survivors reached New York, the world was forced to confront something almost unimaginable. Titanic was supposed to represent the future. She was enormous, luxurious, technologically advanced, and widely regarded as extraordinarily safe. Yet on her maiden voyage, she had disappeared into the Atlantic. For decades, the wreck remained hidden. Then in 1985, an expedition led by Robert Ballard and Jean-Louis Mitchell located Titanic more than 12,000 feet beneath the surface. The wreck was broken into two major sections, surrounded by debris from the ship and the lives of the people who had been aboard her. And even now, Titanic is disappearing. Microorganisms are consuming the iron. Salt water is corroding the steel. The deep ocean is slowly dismantling the remains. Eventually, much of Titanic may be gone, but the mystery won't disappear, because the iceberg was only the final event. The deeper story is the chain that came before it. The warnings, the speed, the limitations of human vision, the missing binoculars, the overloaded wireless room, the outdated lifeboat regulations, the uncertainty surrounding the Californian. None of these things alone sank Titanic, but together they created a situation in which there was almost no room for error. And that's what makes Titanic different from a simple accident. The disaster wasn't caused by one decision. It emerged from dozens of decisions, assumptions, limitations, and missed opportunities. Everyone believed the system would work until it didn't. Titanic struck the iceberg at 11:40 p.m., but perhaps the most important question isn't why the iceberg was there. It's why so many warnings, so many safeguards, and so many opportunities to change course failed to prevent the collision. Because sometimes disaster doesn't arrive in one dramatic moment. Sometimes it builds quietly, one small decision at a time, until the final warning comes too late. The iceberg may have delivered the fatal blow, but the chain that led Titanic toward it had already begun.